Pursuant to Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, NISCA moves that the rule therein be suspended and an urgency be declared, and that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that Senate File Number 1 be given its second and third readings and be placed upon its final passage.
I call on Representative Niska to explain the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is the higher education budget bill. It was posted, the language that we're taking up today was posted actually on May 23rd, and this has been passed by the Senate. We need to take it up to finish our work here today. I urge members to support the motion.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also urge member support.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its second reading.
Second reading, Senate File Number 1.
Second reading. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File Number 1, an act relating to higher education.
I recognize the author from Benton, Representative Wolgamont, to explain the bill.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Speaker and members. I'm very pleased to present to you Senate File 1, House File 6, which is the Higher Education Finance and Policy Bill. This bill is the hard negotiated conclusion of our bipartisan bicameral agreement between myself and our respective conferees, led, of course, by my fellow co-chair, Representative Marion Rarick, and our Senate counterpart, Chair Omar Fateh. And I'm really proud to bring this bill forward to you, members, because despite our differences, despite having different ways that we each wanted to get at the problems facing higher education in Minnesota, all of us did our absolute best to put the needs of Minnesota students first. And that's what's reflected in this bill. Our biggest challenge going into it was having to tackle the $239 million deficit in the state grant program. But I'm proud that in working together through a combination of cuts and levers, we were able to backfill that state grant program, which is going to do so much to making sure that Minnesota students can attend the college of their dreams to get the degree to pursue their careers. That's a big victory in this bill, and I'm really proud of that. I'm also proud that we were able to protect the North Star Promise program, which, as I'm sure you know, is the last dollar program that students from families making $80,000 or less are eligible for, to make sure that every student in Minnesota, regardless of your economic background, is able to afford to go to a college here in Minnesota. That's another big victory that we have in this bill of putting students first. One last thing I'd like to share with you before I hand it over to my co-chair, Madam Speaker, that I'm very proud of is that we were able to work together to achieve an $8 million increase in the Fostering Independence grants to ensure that all of our foster youth in the state of Minnesota are able to obtain a post-secondary degree. Those are a few of the highlights of this bill that put students first. As I mentioned before, there are some tough decisions that had to be made to reach this agreement. And just like I mentioned when this bill first came off the House floor, the bill would look a lot different if Co-Chair Rarick were the full chair of the Higher Education Committee. The bill would probably look a lot different if I were the full chair of the Higher Education Committee. But here we are in a tie. Chair Rarick and I worked together the best that we could to achieve our goals and put students first. That's what this bill reflects, and I'll leave it at that for now, Madam Speaker, and I'm honored to turn it over to my co-chair, Representative Marion Rarick.
I recognize the member from Wright, Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, members, this is a $4 billion bill to take care of students so they can go to college and we can have a great workforce. And we achieved some amazing things. We left this floor with a 0 and a 0 target. We went into the Senate, and when we got into negotiations, we had $22 million and $4.5 million in the tails. And we took that $22 million and started to fill a hole that was $239 million projected hole in the state grant program. So between that, and we actually cut almost $35 million more and put into the state grant program. And yes, we actually were able to take care of the fosters too, because the foster kids are really the ones that really need it because they have nothing. So we were able to add another $8 million to the Fostering Independence Grant Program so that they can get taken care of. So we took care of the state grant program. We turned that $239 million projected hole into a $20 million surplus, with just $22 million of extra money, because we did cut nearly $35 million. Took care of the fosters. So that's a big thing, the biggest things that are in the bill. And I'm sure you've got the bill in front of you. You can see exactly what we cut. But the one thing that I am disappointed in is that we didn't get to the regent selection. And there's really no reason why we couldn't have done the election of the regents. And when I look at state history, there's only been 4 times in the entire state history where we haven't elected regents. And again, there's absolutely no reason to not elect the regents. So I was incredibly disappointed about that. And Madam Speaker, I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll have some more to say about that when we come to our discussion.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File Number 1.
Third reading. Further discussion to the bill. I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Coulter.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to, first of all, just thank everyone involved with this bill for your diligent work on it. I think we negotiated the actual bill almost entirely in good faith, which is like pretty good for this place. And this budget does represent I think, a sincere compromise with the Senate. It does resolve, I think, some of the bigger shortfalls in the original House bill, in particular the cuts to the Student Parent Support Initiative, and as Chair Rarick mentioned, needed funding for fostering independence grants, while completely closing the gap on the state grant program. I think looking forward, we do need to have a serious conversation about how we best support all of our students into the future. And that conversation needs to start right now, because what comes from it will decide who gets an education in Minnesota and who doesn't. And this conversation is only going to become more urgent. Madam Speaker, Pell Grants have been foundational for low-income families to achieve the dream of a college education for generations. But they are also the basis of the state grant program and the North Star Promise program. If the budget that Republicans in Congress are hell-bent on getting through comes to pass, more than 70,000 Minnesota students could see their Pell Grants slashed or lost completely. And this burden would fall especially hard on folks going to school part-time, folks who are very often just trying to do their best to balance work and family and going to school, or often going back to school. If Pell Grants are slashed like they are in the bill that the very people who represent MSU Mankato, St. Cloud State, Southwest Minnesota State, and Bemidji State voted for, those of us in this room are going to feel it when we have to look at a massive hole in our budget. But more importantly, students will feel it when they are left with 2 deeply depressing choices. Take on more debt that, oh, by the way, Congress wants to make it harder for you to pay off, or simply not get an education. That means not only fewer Minnesotans doing the jobs that we know we need more of, but more than that, it means fewer Minnesotans learning. And listening to what some folks have said, including some in this room, you'd be forgiven for thinking that's the goal. To hear some people tell it, the value of education only extends as far as students can be cogs in a machine. Now, I want to be clear that learning marketable skills is absolutely part of the value of education. But so is learning how to learn, how to build and strengthen skills, how to adapt, how to think critically about what's in front of you. In other words, a very real, very important purpose of getting an education is to not be stupid. And just so there's no doubt, that does not require a college degree. We all know brilliant people who don't have a degree and some pretty stupid ones who do. But when the value of education is reduced down to only what makes people money, when we kill off opportunities to learn for the sake of learning, because it's something someone doesn't think is important, or it's done the way someone doesn't think it should be, or where it should be, we kill off creativity. We kill off potential. We kill off the fundamental uniqueness that makes human beings so special. And all we end up with is more stupid people.
Further discussion to the bill? I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I appreciate a lot of the things in this bill, and I'm particularly glad that we were able to fill the hole in the state grant program. And I know it took a lot of hard work on both sides, and I appreciate my colleagues and all the staff on both sides who helped us get there. That will materially matter for students across our state who went through a troubling time this year when the state grant hit the hole. People who had already been promised money had their awards pulled back, and it really was a very frustrating decision or situation for your constituents, all of our constituents. So I'm very thankful that we could get that done. To Chair Rarick's point, I'm very disappointed that we did not do the region election. Members, we had the joint committee on March 18th, where we put forward our recommendations so that this body would have a joint convention and do our constitutional duty to elect 4 regents to the board of the University of Minnesota. That is a legislative responsibility. And instead of getting that done since March 18th, we have continued to ignore that responsibility up into this special session. And what's going to happen is we are ceding our power to the governor, and he is going to appoint the regents. That is not acceptable, members. On either side of this aisle, we should be doing our constitutional duty to elect 4 members of the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents is meeting next week to put together the budget for the university for the coming year, and we will not have had input on that because we will not have sent regents to that meeting. So I'm very disappointed that that is something that we ceded our legislative power to the governor, and I hope that we rectify that when we come back next year. The governor's appointments will stand unless we take back our legislative responsibility and elect regents next year in a joint convention, which we can do. Otherwise, his appointments stand for 2 years. So when we come back in 2026, I hope we do that first on the agenda. I'm also very pleased that we took care of the foster kids in the Fostering Independent Grant Program. But one of my concerns, members, as we go back and think about the budget and the region election is we have very little oversight of the University of Minnesota. As our former colleague Jean Pawlowski used to say, grab them by the budget and don't let go, because we cannot tell them what to do in policy. Budget is our only tool. And the U proposed, and this will be voted on next week, affecting all of our constituents, that they proposed a 6.5 tuition increase for next year, 6.5%, and a 7% cut across the board in academic programs. Meanwhile, they have incredibly increased the expenses in their central administration. And that is why we need regents to provide some oversight over there. So President Cunningham, when she joined, she's getting an annual base salary of $975,000. And over the next 5 years, she's going to make another $675,000 in bonus and incentives, on top of an annual salary of $975,000. The new EVP of Finance, his name is Mr. Goldman, he got a base salary of $750,000, and over the next 5 years, he's going to make another $550,000 in bonuses and incentives. Myron Franz, who was the last SVP of Finance, made $436,000 in his role as an SVP. They doubled the salary of the new EVP of Finance in just their budget increase. I don't know why they're doing that. And then the former SVP left and became a consultant to the U, and now he's made $961,000 as a consultant. The new provost, who's going to be voted on next week, base salary $675,000. Members, they are raising tuition on the students in our state 6.5% to cover this. And I know that we need to be competitive. I want the U to be successful. We have incredibly talented professors and administrators over there, but the administration has gotten top-heavy. And we are ceding our power to the governor by not electing regents and not dealing with this in the budget for the University of Minnesota. So I'm thankful for the good work that was done on some cuts and on filling the state grant, but I just want members to understand the impact that these tuition increases are going to have on affordability of higher ed in our state. Thank you, members.
Further discussion to the bill? I recognize a member from Wright, Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, thank you, Representative Robbins. You were a great ally. Defending the House position, we did a great job. I want to talk a little bit more about the University of Minnesota. Thank you for teeing that up. So I have great concerns too, and we know that they have autonomy. They were here before the state was here, so they are a land-grant institution, and they predate statehood. So what does that mean? It means that we have very limited ability on what we ask them or tell them or order them to do. So we do have the purse strings. And I will say that they get $1.5 billion in this budget. They get zero increase in O&M, and we actually did cut some from some of their specials and some of their riders. But I did do a data request, and I was really shocked when I got the information back. I said this in committee kind of at the end when we were talking about the U. But the 100th salaried person at the University of Minnesota, as of right now, makes $354,000, the 100th person. I was given data from 23 from Minkoji. Now, they've changed their name, but I still call them Minkoji. And that data showed that 2,169 employees in that year made more than the governor. Yeah, somebody behind me said, what? And I said, yeah. Over 2,000 employees in 23 made more than the governor. And I guarantee you they're not making less today. And as Representative Robbins said, the University of Minnesota is going to be raising, potentially, tuition by 6.5%. That's going to go to the regions. Why are the regions important? Let's circle back to the regions. And we have obfuscated our responsibility. That is one of the few things that we have to have some say at the University of Minnesota. And we just threw it out the window. We don't care. I have tried, my husband has tried in the Senate. We've tried here in the House, Representative Robbins has tried to get us to do the region elections. And for some reason, I'm not going to ascribe motives, but for some reason, it is an absolute no. Even Senator Fateh called me and said, hey, can we please do, Chair Fateh was asking me, can we please do the regions? We had that list come to us in the middle of March, and we sat here on it and did nothing with it. It was so important to Representative Robbins and I, and to all of us on this side of the aisle, that yes, Representative Robbins and I did not sign the conference committee report, and we did not take this bill up on the last day of session, because we wanted to do our responsibility, our legislative responsibility, our constitutional responsibility, and elect 4 regions. Why? Because we needed 4 new regions to actually look at the budget, and we had some great ones picked out. They were really, really, really successful for many, many years in finance and law and other things that could have actually taken a hard look at a $5 billion annual budget at the University of Minnesota. And are they top heavy? Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're top heavy. But we're sitting here on our hands. We're not going to do regional elections. I have no idea why. But here we are. We will not have 4 new regions that we select. The governor is going to pick them. How many times has that happened in all of state history? 4. It happened in 1933. Then in 1935, the legislature came in and elected 3 of the 4 governor picks. In 1937, it happened again. I don't know what was happening in 1933 and 37. A little chaotic in the world right then. So then the legislature rejected all 4 of the governor's picks in 1939. In 1973, it happened again. And this time, in 1975, all 4 of the governor's picks were elected. It happened again in 2001. What was happening in 2001, guys? 4 of the 5 governor's picks were elected in 2003 by the legislature. It's only happened 4 times. Now it's happened 5. Now I know that in our 201 here in the legislature, we have 100 Republicans and 101 Democrats. I know very well the numbers. And here we sit. We could have done it today, but we're not going to do it today because we cannot get agreement across the aisle. So I am incredibly disappointed that we are not doing the regent selection. I am going to vote for this bill because this bill is a very good bill. This bill closes the huge gap that we're really affecting students and families. We prioritize students and families over anything else. We did the deepest dive, I think, that has ever been done in the higher ed budget. We made every single group and entity come in and present, even if they only got $90,000. Thank you, former Chair Mariani, who came in and presented, because he gets $90,000 in the biennium for his little nonprofit, and he came in and also presented. And I gave him a gold star because he actually had the parameters that we all now talk about, because we talked about this first in higher ed. We looked at their 990. We looked at what the CEO made. We looked at what all the other employees made, how many of them were above the governor or not, how much of their money went to fundraising and other types of things. So we looked at all that, and he presented exactly what he does. And interestingly, the Senate had that as a cut. So the Senate Democrats cut former Chair Mariani's nonprofit money of $90,000. We did not. Because we actually had done the work over here in the House and we had vetted everything. We did, however, cut money that was going to Lutheran Social Services because that CEO made $420,000 and their top 10 people made more than the governor. We cut that. So we did the hard work. We did the hard budget work. We looked at every single thing and looked under every cushion that we could find in that couch to try to make those students whole. That's what we did. That's why we cut nearly $35 million and took quite a bit of the $22 million that we got extra spending and put it into the state grant program. We also dialed back some parameters that were just causing money to go out like a fire hose. And so we dialed those back so that we had a more even money going out. Because I told you, $239 million was the equivalent to one entire year's worth of state grants. That's how big the hole was. So we fixed that. We fixed it through adding new money, and we actually changed some of the policy so that that didn't happen again. So we did some really good hard work. I really, really, really wished we had done regents. And I know I heard my husband say it over in the Senate. He said the exact same thing because we both have been working really hard to try to find good, qualified regent candidates that could do a really good job to do what we cannot do. They are the governing body of the University of Minnesota. So thank you, Madam Speaker, and with that, I ask for a green vote.
I recognize Representative Wolgamont.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for the discussion on this bill. Madam Speaker, before I give my closing remarks on the bill, I want to share some words of gratitude. I want to thank each and every one of the members of the Higher Education Committee for showing up, for asking questions, for, as Rep. Robbins said, as my predecessor, Gene Pulaski, would say, we showed up, we grabbed them by the budgets, we didn't let go, and we had some really great accountable hearings. So thank you to each of the members on the committee. I'd specifically like to thank Vice Chair Nathan Coulter for all of his hard work and leadership. Being former higher ed researcher really was a great advantage, and thank you for all of your leadership throughout the session and for putting this bill together. I also want to give big thanks and credit to the incredible hard work of our staff who made this happen. our nonpartisan staff, Nathan Hopkins and Ken Savory. The Republican partisan staff were terrific to work with, Lori Cousinow, Ben Freese, and James Cook. And I want to give a humongous thank you to my DFL partisan staff for all their support and hard work, Sean Herring, Evelyn Weiner, Drew Jones, as well as our committee interns, Bobby Granquist and Jacob Bloom, who's up here tonight, closing out his internship strong. Each and every one of you played a really important part in the committee work and in the session and in the hearings, and it's all that hard work that has led to the bill that's before you and the great things that it's going to accomplish for Minnesota students. And that's what I want to close with, Madam Speaker. That's exactly what this bill is about, Minnesota's students. Here in the state of Minnesota, we have three incredible structures for higher education. We have the University of Minnesota system. We have the Min-State colleges and universities. I'm really honored to represent St. Cloud State, St. Cloud Technical Community College. I've seen firsthand the impact that's had on my community, as well as Minnesota's private colleges and universities. And we want to make sure that every student, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, no matter what your passion is, no matter what you want to do to achieve your dreams, we want to make sure that you get to go to the school that you want to pursue your career, to make your dreams come true, and to bring the best out of yourself. That's what this bill does, and that's why I ask for your green vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There's no further discussion. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the name of the member participating remotely.
Olson.
Senate File 1, Olson votes yes.
Olson votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 95 ayes and 36 nays, the bill is passed and its title is agreed to.